The wrench slipped in her grease-slicked fingers as laughter echoed through the motor pool. Specialist Sarah Chen kept her head buried in the Humvee's engine compartment, pretending not to hear the voices behind her, low enough to avoid official notice, loud enough to ensure she caught every word. "Look at her go," someone muttered, like she actually knows what she's doing. "Give it another hour before she calls for backup," came another voice, followed by snickering. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the concrete floor, illuminating pools of motor oil and scattered tools. Sarah's hands moved with practiced precision, checking connections and testing voltage, while her tormentors watched from their cluster near the parts cage. They thought she couldn't hear them over the hum of the overhead ventilation system. She pulled a rag from her back pocket and wiped the sweat and grease from her forearms, the fabric catching momentarily on the intricate tattoo that wrapped around her left bicep. The design was complex, geometric patterns interwoven with symbols that looked military but weren't standard issue. Footsteps approached from the main entrance, their cadence different from the casual shuffle of enlisted personnel. Sarah glanced up to see a figure in pressed ACUs moving through the motor pool with the measured stride of senior leadership. Colonel Hayes making his routine inspection tour. The laughter died instantly as the men snapped to attention. Sarah straightened, wiping her hands clean as military protocol demanded acknowledgement of rank. Colonel Hayes stopped mid-stride when his eyes found her arm. His gaze locked onto the tattoo, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, then something deeper. Without warning, his entire posture transformed. His spine went rigid, his chin lifted, and his right hand rose in a crisp salute, directed squarely at her. The motor pool fell silent, except for the distant hum of machinery. Sarah stared, her rag forgotten in her grip. Colonels didn't salute specialists. The hierarchy was carved in stone, immutable as gravity. Yet here he stood, maintaining perfect military bearing, while she stood in grease-stained coveralls, with motor oil under her fingernails. The men who'd been laughing moments before now watched with confusion and growing unease, their earlier bravado evaporating like steam. 6 months ago, Sarah had been invisible, another face in the sea of mechanics rotating through Fort Carson's motor pool, distinguished only by her gender and her stubborn refusal to request easier assignments. She worked the heavy equipment while others handled routine maintenance, rebuilt transmissions while they changed oil filters. The work suited her. Engines made sense. Cause and effect. Problem and solution. Everything reducible to mechanical principles that didn't care about politics or prejudice. She could lose herself in the rhythm of diagnostics, the satisfaction of bringing dead machines back to life. Her supervisors grudgingly acknowledged her competence, but competence wasn't the same as acceptance. She ate lunch alone more often than not, her table in the DFAC gradually emptying as conversations moved elsewhere. When equipment failed during field exercises, her repairs held, but the credit somehow always flowed to her male counterparts. Sarah had learned early that proving herself was a daily requirement, not a one-time achievement. Every diagnostic had to be perfect, every repair flawless, every deadline met ahead of schedule. The margin for error that others enjoyed simply didn't exist for her. She'd grown accustomed to being underestimated, to having her work double-checked and her judgment questioned. The assumption that she'd wash out had followed her through basic training, advanced individual training, and now into her permanent assignment. She carried the weight of every woman who'd come before and failed, whether through lack of ability or lack of opportunity. The only luxury she allowed herself was the small ritual she performed each morning, before PT, running her fingers over the tattoo on her arm, feeling the raised lines where the ink had settled into her skin 2 years ago. The design had been her mother's idea, sketched during their last conversation, before the cancer took her voice entirely. Colonel Rebecca Chen had never spoken much about her military service, deflecting questions with the same gentle firmness she'd used to enforce curfews and homework deadlines. "Some stories aren't mine to tell," she'd said when Sarah pressed for details about the commendations gathering dust in the bedroom closet. Awards with classifications Sarah didn't recognize, citations signed by generals whose names were redacted in permanent black ink. The tattoo contained symbols Sarah didn't fully understand. A stylized eagle clutching lightning bolts, numbers. That might have been coordinates, geometric patterns that seemed almost like code. Her mother had insisted on the exact placement, the precise sizing, the specific shade of midnight blue that made the design appear almost black unless caught in direct light. "It's important that it's right," she'd whispered from her hospital bed, her fingers tracing the design one final time. "Someday you'll understand why." Sarah had honored the request without fully comprehending it, carrying her mother's final gift as both remembrance and mystery. The tattoo artist in Colorado Springs had worked from the sketch with unusual care, checking and rechecking each element as if the precision mattered more than aesthetics. Back in the motor pool, Colonel Hayes hadn't moved. His salute remained, locked in position, respectful and unwavering. Sarah could feel the weight of stares from every corner of the bay, mechanics frozen in place, NCOs emerging from their office, the sudden attention making her skin crawl with unease. The colonel's eyes held knowledge she couldn't access, recognition of something she'd carried without understanding its significance. There was reverence in his posture, the kind of deference shown to superior rank or distinguished service. But Sarah was neither. She stood motionless, uncertain whether to return the salute or demand an explanation. The silence stretched between them like a taut cable, threatening to snap under the pressure of accumulated questions. Staff Sergeant Morrison appeared at her elbow, his face flushed with embarrassment and confusion. "Sir, is there—" Hayes cut him off with a subtle hand gesture, never breaking eye contact with Sarah. The message was clear. This moment belonged to them alone. The whispers started before she'd even left the motor pool that evening. Sarah felt them following her through the chow hall, across the quad, into the barracks where conversation died whenever she appeared. Word traveled fast on military bases, especially when it involved unexplained breaks in protocol. "Did you see what happened with Chen and the colonel? Heard he saluted her like she outranked him. What's that about? She's just a mechanic." The speculation grew more elaborate with each retelling. Some suggested favoritism, others hinted at classified connections. A few voices, quieter but more dangerous, implied she'd somehow manipulated the situation to her advantage. Sergeant Phillips cornered her outside the laundry facility on Wednesday evening. He'd always been one of the worst, the kind who made comments just loud enough to ensure she heard them, who assigned her the dirtiest jobs, with barely concealed satisfaction. "Getting special treatment now, Chen." His tone carried an edge that hadn't been there before. "Must be nice having friends in high places." Sarah kept walking, but Phillips fell into step beside her. "Word of advice, that kind of attention isn't always a good thing. People start asking questions, digging into backgrounds. Sometimes they don't like what they find." The threat hung in the air like exhaust fumes. Sarah quickened her pace, but Phillips's words followed her home. Thursday brought a different kind of tension. The laughter had stopped entirely, replaced by careful observation and measured distance. Men who'd previously ignored her now watched her work with suspicious eyes, as if she might transform into something dangerous without warning. During the afternoon maintenance briefing, Master Sergeant Rodriguez pulled her aside. His expression was serious, almost fatherly in its concern. "That mark on your arm," he said quietly, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. "Some people won't forgive it. Whatever it represents, it's got the brass nervous and the enlisted pissed off. Be careful who you trust." The warning settled in her stomach like cold lead. Sarah had never asked for attention, never wanted anything beyond the chance to do her job without interference. Now she felt exposed, marked by forces she didn't understand. The encounter came Friday at 1500 hours, when the motor pool had emptied for the weekend, and Sarah remained behind to finish rebuilding a differential. Colonel Hayes appeared without warning, his footsteps soft on the concrete floor. Specialist Chen. His voice carried authority, tempered by something that might have been respect. Sarah set down her tools and turned to face him. "Sir?" Hayes moved closer, studying the tattoo on her exposed arm with the intensity of someone reading classified documents. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Task Force Nightfall," he said, and Sarah felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "Sir?" "The insignia on your arm. It belonged to Task Force Nightfall, a special operations unit that officially never existed." Hayes's eyes never left the tattoo. "Your mother commanded it for 3 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. Classified missions, zero acknowledgement, maximum impact."